Gregg Braggs, what's up, man?
How we doing? How we doing? Appreciate you having
You,
me on.
yeah, man. No, I've been looking forward to this for a while now because this is what you do. This is your profession. So look, you got the setup, you got everything going. So we're gonna have no problem filling time here. But also, I've just known you for a long time,
Yeah,
almost my whole life.
yeah. I told Jenny, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a interview with Mikey. She's like, your trainer, Mikey? I go, the guy we went to elementary school with, Mikey.
The
Not,
guy that you showed up in my bar mitzvah video drumming in the background. Yeah, no, that's funny. But as we get older, it's so rare that everybody sees each other other than online. So I'm glad we're getting some time to actually talk about stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about fitness on, but it isn't so much fitness related. So before I get into the topic of today, I do want to give you an introduction, just because this will be going to my audience. So I want to let them know who you are. So, Greg, you do multiple different things. You're host of Brags in the Stands, which is your own podcast.
yep.
Chicago Bears coverage with CHGO Sports. So you're a member of the press. And then also feel free to chime in if you know me in sports. We don't go hand in hand. So if there's something that else that you do, let me know. But you're a sports commentator. You've been featured on Fox Sports. I mean, you're all over Twitter. I mean, you're a big deal in your realm. So and also a longtime friend. I've known you since elementary school, so we go way back. And just in recent years, I've been coaching you. So we got a lot to talk about, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Uh, kind of doing what I've been doing here for the last few years. You've known me since like we were talking about elementary school and being as passionate as I have been in sports, I to be able to finally like say all the things you just read off, like I never take it for granted. It's still kind of surreal to me even in the moment. And it's just one of those things where every day, like today, tomorrow I'll do it again, Saturday I'll do it again, and every day I'm excited to do it because I was a bricklayer for 20 years for those that don't know. And I loved bricklaying. I took a lot of pride in what I did, and it was a very rewarding job. Every time you finish the day, you built a different wall, different house, different building. But sports was always my passions, but I never really knew how I could find my way into doing that for a living, and never really thought that was even going to become an option once I started to become, a husband and father, and well into my 30s, and then all of a sudden, a little sliver of light opened up through the
What was that
doorway. And
sliver of light? Like, how did you start? Because I mean,
it was
you've
social media. So I mean, social
okay.
media opened a door for me that wasn't there. But when Twitter and Facebook and Instagram were still in its infancy, it was very much a, post things and a couple of your friends or family might see it, but it was more, to go on and search information on Twitter or see what somebody you went to high school with is doing on vacation. But then it started turning into a social media started turning into a self promotion tool.
Was Twitter
And
because Twitter is what really blew up for you, right?
yeah, yeah, you just never know where it's going to catch for people. Some people it's YouTube,
It
some
always seems
people
like
it's
everyone has their
right.
one
Once you exactly
platform.
100%, everybody kind of finds their one. It's very rare that you find somebody that's like, oh, I'm good on all five of these platforms. They just hone in
Yeah.
on one. Now it's TikTok. I can't tell you how to use TikTok.
Have you been on
Um,
TikTok yet?
no, I mean
Me neither.
I'll
I
I
haven't either.
find my way into reels, but do I post on TikTok? No. Should I? 100% because
Yeah.
people are making huge money off it, but it's past me. Like Twitter is my wheelhouse. And sometimes it's a little dangerous in this media game, to put all your eggs in one basket. That's why it can be a little exhausting trying to keep up with all these different things. But yeah, Twitter, so like Instagram and Facebook are private. So you have to be my friend to see my stuff. But Twitter is kind of where you can take your content to other people's doorstep. You can go into their comment sections. You can other people retweet your stuff and it finds its way to their followers. And that was where the light bulb went off, and it was covering high school sports. At first, I started going to high school basketball games and just doing a couple of videos of, a kid hitting a shot, and I'd tag his school and his name, and I'd have parents reaching out to me like, "Hey, thank you for doing that because this wasn't covered, and I wouldn't have been able to see this otherwise." And I was like, "Okay, that's what I need to start doing."
It's
Is
like you were
instead,
just kind of documenting things, or like just kind
right,
of being like
yeah, in the
press
stands,
on the ground, right?
documenting the
Yeah.
fan in the stands experience, walking into the building, a picture of the stadium, a video of a game-winning shot or a touchdown at Soldier Field. And that stuff started to circulate because people enjoy the different perspective than what you just see on TV. And then they started circulating my stuff, and then it would find its way to bigger outlets, and before you knew it, I started having a following built up, and I was like, okay, this is how I'm gonna do this. And that was the light that opened up in the doorway.
Yeah, as far back as we've known each other, because sports has always been your thing. And, I, for me, when I would ever, we would all hang out, I would go, but I would just, everyone likes sports except for Mikey. So I'm just going to go to hang out. Right. I always joke, like I'd have to, for a sports game to be entertaining to me, I'd have to place a bet on it with so much money that I couldn't afford to lose it for that to keep my my interest. So when we were there, as
Well,
far
people
back as
that
I
love sports do that, what you
yeah,
just said. Even people that love
yeah,
sports have to do it in that way to like be insanely emotionally invested in it. I just get emotionally invested in the teams that, I grew up loving and dying for. And these Chicago sports teams are just great at not doing anything good. So anytime they're remotely good, that keeps you death starved for more.
you
We're
know what
certainly not
though,
we're not spoiled here in Chicago with wins since Michael
you know what
Jordan.
you know what though, I always get interested in people's passion. So maybe the content, like sports, maybe that's not my interest, but what interests me is seeing someone being so passionate about what they're doing. It could be anything. It could be, you could be passionate about chess, but like, let's say you're like, chess is your thing, and you're in love with chess, and you geek out over all the little nuances of it. And when I talk to you, you see the passion in the face, you hear the excitement, and then, oh, all of a sudden this person's, you know, making a living playing chess, so it's seeing you being, because you were doing this stuff like how I started with fitness. I wasn't doing it for any money. I was just helping people because I wanted to help people, because I was that passionate about it. It wasn't until later when I had clients that I was like, because I was doing everything pro bono, that I was like, whoa, light bulb, like maybe I could actually turn this into like a career. And so with you were doing this for free at first, like probably with it not even on your radar until like you started gaining momentum.
Yep.
And then after a while, because you were also doing bricklaying full time for a long time. So probably after a while, you got that light bulb and were like, wait a minute, like there is potential here, and you saw a future. So like when did that shift start for you?
Yeah, definitely like 2018 around that time, because like I said, the high school stuff, I was like, okay, this is my first shot to like get into something that's structured. Then with the Bears stuff, Chicago Bears stuff starting to take off, I was like, all right, I see an alleyway. And I guess the unique thing and part of my story was because I was so invested in Chicago sports coverage already, that I had built up small relationships with people that already worked in the industry just as a fan. Like David Kaplan is like the highest paid Chicago sports radio host right now in all of the city. And he knew me just as a fan of his show. Tom Waddle and Mark Silverman on the Waddle and Sylvie show. Tom Waddle's a former Bear. They knew me from calling in. I was simply Greg from St. John who called in every week, and would get in these shouting matches with them, and then come to their live
What were they
shows.
over? Like, what were the shouting matches over?
You know, just the team and our
Yeah.
opinion on who they should, what's the
I've
better
seen,
player.
I've seen you get pretty riled up over some
Oh yeah,
sport.
and they would.
I think
feed
there's a
into
few
that.
holes in your wall in your old house from
Yes,
some
yes,
loses.
I used to, when I would call in, because like when you're a new caller, they're not just putting you right on. You have to stay on hold. As you call more and they know who you are and they trust you, they put you on a little quicker. But there were days where I would wait on hold to get on ESPN 1000 for 3 hours. I would
While you
sit
were
in.
doing brickwork or something, like you'd just be on
Yeah,
holder.
sometimes I'd
Yeah.
call in at the end of the day because the show would start at 2, and I'd be on hold all the way until I got home, and I'd be
Yeah.
sitting in my garage in my work clothes still, waiting to get on. Sometimes they'd put me on while I was working. Like there were times where I'd be called, they'd be like, Greg from St. John, you're on the air. And I'd be literally laying brick with earbuds in, arguing with these guys about my sports take that whatever they said. And I would write, if I was sitting at home in my garage, I'd get so fired up that I'd write down what I wanted to say. And then the funniest part about me, and you know this about me, I would completely go on. I would have all this stuff ready. Then they'd say you're on the air, and I'd just start talking like I'm doing now. And I would completely black out and have no idea what I said. Like it'd be 3 minutes of this rage.
Would you make your way back to the points though? So like I get when you say that. So like for me, like even right now, like I have bullet points as like almost like a roadmap, but everything in between is blank. So like it just keeps you on track. And even like if I'm giving like a best man speech at a wedding or something like that,
Right.
I'll give myself bullet points and then I'll just fill in those blanks. But the
Yep.
bullet points help me stay on track. Did you just go completely off the rails, or would you make your way back?
Yeah, it would always find a way to tie its way back. There's this guy that interviews me on a different podcast outlet called Windy City Gridiron, and he said it. There was this guy that wrote a book about the web of the subconscious mind, or something like to that extent. And he said that that's who I am. That I talk in the subconscious, but it's in a way that it ties itself together. And sometimes, like when I'm doing my shows now, these guys that I do the show with, it took them a while to get used to the way I talk and the way it's like this journey where it's going to come back to my original point. And sometimes I'll go completely off the reservation, but it's just kind of the way I've
You
always.
do know what you're talking about though. So one thing I noticed, like when just from when we would hang out and I'd be there for the sporting event, whatever sporting event it was, or just from seeing your page and seeing your videos, you know what you're talking about, and you have a unique style, and that comes through even to someone like me, where this is just, it's not in my wheelhouse. You can tell when someone knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And it seems like your audience waits on your every word too. Like you have a very engaged audience.
Yeah, 100%. The one thing I think that people enjoy about me is that there are people that know way more about the X's and O's of sports. And this is something like I push back, like now that I'm on this huge platform with CHGO Sports where we have, I mean, sometimes we'll have 50 to 100,000 views.
I called it
listens.
CHGO Sports. Is that the correct? Is it CHG? I was looking at it and I'm like,
it's okay.
okay, all right. I just want to make sure I got that right.
Everyone, no, it's okay. Some people call it. The worst one is when people call it CHGO. So they make it halfway there. They say the first two letters and then they say go. And no, it's CHGO Sports.
Okay, cool.
They derived from Denver, and there's 4 different outlets: DNVR for Denver, Phoenix,
yeah, all right, cool.
And they.
I just want to make sure that I got the name right, but
good.
Also, like, obviously, what we're talking about today is going all in on your passion. Because when I was even thinking about like, okay, so like, what do Greg and I have in common? Because sports, that's not it, but we both went all in on our passions, and we do share a lot of common ground in those experiences. And also, like, things didn't happen immediately for us. They took some time. So it didn't just like take off for you. I
No.
mean, you like you said, like isn't 2018 where it started to
Right.
kind of happen? But like, how long did it take before that? Like I mean,
Until,
you were
yeah,
doing this
another
for a
4
while.
years before something. So like I stayed with it because like I said, I knew people in the industry who were kind of watching me and helping me, and then I knew my following was building up. And I kept telling Jenny, I was like, if I stay at this, you never know, something could pop. It's just kind of how it goes. The bigger you get, the more popular you get, so to speak, the more these media people start knocking on your door, because they want your crowd. And so I just kind of stuck with it. And when CHGO Sports became a company 2 years ago, you could tell right away it was like the perfect fit for me, because they're all about the fan experience. It's an outlet that has half credentialed journalists who are a little more serious and a little more smarter than me, and then half the people like me. Like right now, I'm wearing a shirt that says Meatball Island with a giant meatball that looks like Mike Ditka, and that's my role on the show, is to be the passionate, loudmouth fan that shoots from the hip, from emotion, and not as always from this place of detail. And that's what I try to tell fans, because everybody that tunes into our show, everybody has a different taste. So there's some people that don't really like what I bring to the table on the shows, and that's been an adjustment for me as a people pleaser. But at the end of the day, it's sports entertainment. It's not the business isn't called sports expertise. So while it's good to be an expert and know what you're talking about, it's equally important to be entertaining. And
Yeah,
so that's
I could see where that would be your strong point, because you have always been, you know, I would say loud and in your
obnoxious.
face,
You can say it. Obnoxious,
loud and
loud,
in your face,
boisterous,
ob-
confident, arrogant.
obnoxious.
Yeah,
That's not a
all of
terrible
those things.
word for it. But I could see where that would be a huge draw and add some, like, I guess, excitement to, like, add a different dynamic to like what you're talking about, rather than just like the facts and the statistics and everything like that and the averages. But also, like, people can probably relate to that, because like, aren't a lot of like major sport fans, like, they do shoot from the hip and they do get very emotional when
Right.
when
Well,
they're
and that
in the
exactly. I
game.
mean, I wore a bag on my when we got beat by the Kansas City Chiefs week 3 by like 50. I literally wore a brown paper bag with holes in it for a 2-hour show. And it was, if you go back and watch it, it's one of the funniest shows you'll ever see if
Wait,
you
you wore the
just
bag
enjoy.
over your head with the two
Yeah,
holes
and
for
yeah, and my mouth. I eventually cut a hole for my mouth. And the whole show was just hilarious because, it was funny at first, but then I stayed with the bit and
Yeah.
was like, we go in to start talking serious breakdown of the post game, but I'm still wearing the bag on my head. So it's like they're conversating with this guy who, and we ended up calling the character Bagman, and fans loved it. It was hilarious. And I said to people, it was probably my pinnacle of my media career. I don't know what that says about me, but that's what I take pride in, is that kind of stuff. And that's where it has been interesting to get in this industry, because sports media, especially in Chicago, is a very tight knit circle, and these guys all went to school for it for the most part, and I didn't. And now I come in here as this bricklayer loudmouth who got here from Twitter, and there's some that look at me with a side eye, like, you're messing up what we do. I had one guy that works for the Chicago Tribune say on a show live to thousands of people that I was hurting the journalistic integrity of sports media, as if we're covering the Cold War or
Yeah,
something.
that's
Like,
taking it a little bit too
calm
serious,
down,
right?
but that's kind of what I'm up against, is kind of breaking the mold, because you're right. I could take that guy that thinks he's this astute journalist, but I could take him to the tailgates we do and introduce him to 1,000 fans who don't know who he is. They know who I am because I'm the fan in the stands. I'm the guy that you're going to have a drink with at the tailgate and talk about the game while we're throwing bags. And for a lot of fans, that's all they want in their coverage. They just
It's
want
more
to have
relatable,
fun.
right? Like, it's
Right.
way more like, people tend to relate to that. And also, like, one thing I've noticed just from being in the fitness industry, and then even seeing behind the curtain a little bit in the music industry with like the music stuff that I do, when you get like real deep into all industries, always like there's always shady characters, and there's always people that you're not going to align with. So that's probably being in love with sports and then pulling the curtain back and see like the business side and just like the back end of it.
Yep.
That's always an interesting experience because that's what really tests your passion for something, because that's enough for some people. It's like meeting, it's almost like meeting a celebrity and then being let down. You're like, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Because in every industry, once you pull back that curtain, you see that just people are fucking people, and people are just flawed, like no matter who they are. But they're also, a lot of times you just don't get along with a lot of people, and that's all right. But what's cool is like you carve out your own thing, which is exactly what you've done.
That's the number one thing when you're doing, if you're trying to start something, I don't care what it is, you got to keep your circle small, because it doesn't matter what you're trying to go after. You're going to have the gatekeepers. You're going to have the people with ulterior motives. You're going to have people that, are saying they're rooting for you, but they're really not.
Do you have a story? Like, do you have an example of anything like that? Like, has anyone tried to fuck you over? Or
you'll go through that, and because when you're first getting into it, and even now, you're going to have people reaching out to you. And if you're the type of personality like me that believes in people, that wants to see the best in people, I'm a very flawed person. I'm not perfect. I have a big ego, borderline narcissist. I'm not afraid to admit that.
I don't know, man. Narcissists aren't self-aware.
Yeah, and that's why it's less below the borderline. A narcissist, I don't think, would be willing to admit that. But I also can admit I think everyone has a percentage of narcissism within them. It's how much they want to admit that or acknowledge that.
Anyone that gets on camera.
Right. And and that's what it takes to be in media. You got to have a little bit of that confidence. That's another word for ego, is confidence. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I have that. But then what happens is, I'm also the type of person that wants everyone to like me, wants everyone to be my friend. You know this. We both of us threw huge parties as kids. I wanted everybody at my house. I wanted everyone to have a good time. I wanted everyone to include me in their circle. And that didn't change as I got older, and I really had to learn to shorten my circle up, because it's just a reality of life. When you're young, your circle can be big, but then when you start to have goals, you got to shorten your circle up, because other people are just going to think differently than you. And not everybody's always looking out for your excuse me. Not everybody's looking out for your best interests. And, and not everybody wants to play as a team. I don't expect someone that works with me. Like, I do Boilers coverage on my own, Purdue Boilermaker coverage on my own. I got these two guys that work with me. I want them to look out for themselves. I'm looking out for myself. But we understand how to work as a team, and not everybody understands how to work as a team. And so the bigger your team gets, the harder it is to find that path. And so, yeah, I've come across, I've lost friendships over some of this stuff. And
in what way was it? Was it because you were spending your time? Because when you're passionate about something, you go all in. I mean, it's not uncommon to be up at 1:00 in the morning working.
Right.
Like that's a very common thing. And so you spend most of your time, like you could alienate people. And sometimes when people see that, they'll be like, oh, like this person doesn't care about me. Like, has there been like something that happened?
I think where the friction starts, especially in this industry, and I'm sure it's with others, it derives from competitiveness. Who gets the acknowledgement? Who gets the credit? Who gets the stardom? And when you're working with people, and my star was starting to rise, like for me, I've always felt like I'm a natural born leader. I always felt like I'm just very determined, and I knew where I was trying to go. And it's one of those things where it was like, well, if you want to, like, I want to work as a team, but hop on the ride, because this is my ride over here. If you got your ride, we can try to do this together. But at the end of the day, I think jealousy starts to sink in for some people.
Was it like creative differences then,
Yeah, it's
in a way?
yeah, some people would. So some of the people that I worked with trying to go for the money way too fast. I was never worried about the money. I wanted to I wanted to get my name out there because I saw the bigger picture, at least for my roadmap. And this doesn't work for everybody. I had the luxury of my wife's a nurse practitioner. I'm a bricklayer. I didn't have to attack the money. So I looked at it like my advantage is not being part of a job, not trying to make money right away. Just build it, build your following, build your name recognition, and the job will come one day. And if it doesn't, you can at least say you had fun trying. And that was my goal. For other people, they were like, trying to push me too hard to get into, because I always looked at money as a system of control. If somebody was started to pay me, then I'm on their time. Then I'm on what they have to delegate for what I have to do for them. I didn't want anybody to tell me what to do because I wanted this to be my painting picture and do it exactly how I
Yeah,
want to
you
do
had
it without
an exact vision of what things
right.
look
And
like.
so then the other aspect, like I said, is the competitiveness. And when for whatever reason I've always had this kind of infectious personality, I've always had this contagiousness of like I always knew how to attack the moment. My energy would always attract things that would happen naturally and organically, and it seemed to when I got into this, I understood how to attack that moment, but that would always get me into these moments where stuff would go quote unquote viral. And when you're working with other people have that that in the same way, they look at you with a side eye. They look at you like you're selfish and you're doing, you know what I mean? And it turns into a competitiveness. And it like I said, it was hard for me to, and that's why I eventually started going on my own. Like I had done different outlets, I had done different things for different people. I had worked with other people on my own, doing the high school stuff and all this other stuff. And then I was like, you know what? Until I have my own thing, I'm going to continue to run into these problems. So I said, okay, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to see how far I can spread my wings. And if nothing happens, I'll just be a bricklayer that has fun doing a little podcast on the side.
But
But
you
if
also
not,
like bricklaying too, right? Like, so
love
that
brick.
wasn't like, so like I mean, there's something to be said for like doing something that you love. Like, so you went about things in the right way where you weren't trying to like get the bag right away. Like you were willing to put in the time, put in the work because at the end of the day, you believed in what you were doing so much that you knew the money would come. Because
Well,
when
and
you
I was
love,
passionate about it because that's
yeah,
the other element of this is people that get in this industry and other stuff, maybe even with your stuff, they're not actually passionate about it.
no.
Some people are just looking for an angle to the end game, but they're not truly passionate about it. And that's the
And
other
you
thing
could
that's
tell too when someone's passionate and when someone's not. Like I said, when I started the whole fitness thing, it started because I just was passionate about helping people and I was doing it for free for a while before I decided to turn it into like an actual career.
Yep. And I try to stress this to the young people that reach out to me about, hey, I'm doing this and how do I get to where you got? And then nobody's gonna take and I don't even mind telling people the exact step for step of how I got to where I got because it's impossible to duplicate. Like you're
That's
not
because
gonna
that's a so that is because we were talking about gatekeeping. I don't know if that was before we started or during this,
no,
but
I said it a little bit
yeah,
ago.
you said something about gatekeeping, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that. Like if someone sends me a message on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I will answer every single question because of the exact same thing. Like no one could be you. So it at the end of the day, it you could give the advice and they could make it their own, but no one can be you or do what you do. So you're not worried about that.
The two best pieces of advice I ever got were from David Kaplan, like I said, from ESPN 1000. one of the top radio hosts in Chicago for the last 20 years, 30 years. He told me two things: lift as you climb. That was number one. Lift as you climb. And number two, say yes to everything. And so
Explain lift as you climb. Like,
right, lift as you climb, meaning you're on a rise, but that doesn't mean while you're climbing up the ladder to push other people down to get ahead.
gotcha.
It means pull those people up with you. And you never know who you're lifting up that could eventually help you too. You know, you should just do those things in general because it's the right thing to do, but it's also something that could pay off for you in the end. You know, and Kevin Kadick, who's the head of content at CHGO, he reached out to me during COVID and said, you know, I quit my job, or I lost my job at this, you know, when he worked for a USA Today or something like that. He's like, I just started my own newsletter, and I didn't never met him in person in my life. I had him on one show one time on one of my podcasts, and he was like, would you mind promoting my newsletter weekly? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Just send the link and I'll retweet it, or I'll promote it on my channels. And I did that throughout COVID and continued, and I subscribed to his stuff and would give him shout outs. I didn't ask him for anything. I didn't ask him for money for that. I just said, sure. There wasn't a long conversation attached to it. A, I did it because Kevin was a nice person. It was a tough time for everyone. B, it's the least I can do, you know, as far as just somebody that wants people to support me in that same way. And see, yeah, of course, I knew it's planting a seed. This is a guy that works in the industry, and you do him a favor. And this is the thing, another thing that people don't understand. Just, I always talk specifically in my industry, but I'm sure it's across the board, even with what you do. People are way too quick when you talk about networking, which is when you talk about passion and all the different things that got me to this point. Networking is also one of the biggest factors that got me here. But networking, to some kids, I think they think it means getting someone's number and then immediately asking them for a
Dude,
favor.
yes.
And that's not what networking is.
Right.
Networking is about building authentic and genuine relationships with people that may take years for it
Mhm.
to facilitate into something you're looking for, or a bridge you're looking to cross. And sometimes it means networking with someone that it never uh, gives you something back. You have to just do right by people. That's what networking is. And then one day that karma will eventually come back to you. So Kevin Kadick, years down the road, he understood who I was. I helped him out, you know, when he was doing something, not like it was like making or breaking his newsletter, but it was, you know, like him acknowledging, okay, this guy's a good guy. Now he becomes head of content at this new company called CHGO. And before you know it, now I'm working for him. And that took 3 years for that relationship to become a bridge for me.
And it
And
was
kid,
organic too. Like
right.
you know, you were doing that because you were being genuine and genuinely wanting to start a relationship, not just like sliding into the DMs being like, hey, can you do this for me? Hey, I need you to do, like, which is what a lot of people
Well, we
do.
all understand everybody's looking for, you know, a favor. I mean, I don't think he understands that when I, but at the same time, I was willing to risk that it never turned into something, and you have to
Right.
accept that. You know, like somebody, if I'm going to help somebody out that comes in my DMs, I don't expect them 10 years from now to do me a favor, but they're more than, there's a better chance they will, because they're going to remember who you were, you know, in
Yeah.
that moment. So it's easier to be kind to people. It's easier to treat people right, and see what comes from that than being ultra competitive, knocking people down, you know, punching down on people. You know, that's not how you're gonna get anywhere in life.
So let's talk about some obstacles, because things have not always just been a straight shot. When you're going for something like this, whether it's sports, fitness, music, whatever, there are a lot of windy roads and detours, and you have to backtrack some. So, were there any like major obstacles that you faced when deciding to go all in, or even like skepticism? Like, have you ever had anyone like doubt you? Because I'll just say, for example, myself, I remember when I was making the move to go full time from my family business into coaching, and I would tell people, I was like, people naturally ask, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm coaching." And they'd be like, "Well, what about your family business?" And I do come from a family business that's reputable around the area. It's a well established business, and it does very well, and I'm very proud of that. But there was a time when people would say to me, especially when this was very new. Now it's kind of like people know what I do, but then people would say things like, "Are you really sure you should do that? You got a real good opportunity going here," or "Why would you do that?" Like they couldn't wrap their head around like, you know, taking a couple steps back to take a couple steps forward to actually do something that you are very passionate about and something that you love, and not just going straight for the money, or even taking a couple steps back financially because down the line the money will be there. So did you ever have to face any like skepticism with your switch?
Yeah, I mean, some of the most hurtful things I had said to me when I first started covering high school sports were people kind of making fun of me, close friends of mine making fun of me for, as they called it, riding kids' jock straps and shit like that. Like that bugged me. Like I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like, hey, this is a great starting point for me. Like, I'm passionate about sports. I love high school basketball in Indiana. Um, and to me, like hearing that kind of stuff, it was just like people making fun of me. Like instead of going out with our friends like we used to do every Friday night, I'm at a high
Yeah.
school sport. I'm 30 years old at a high school game, chasing around the football players trying to get a good video shot and stuff. Yeah, well, this is fun to me. This is something that, and like instead of hearing that support, like I would hear those kind of things, but that didn't really deter me. It more so kind of showed me for who some of those people were. Um, my biggest personal um, hurdles were my personal emotional stability, my emotional maturity. That was
What do
the
you what do you
hard.
mean what do you mean by that?
I I mean, but the people listening don't. I mean, I was a very immature kid. I was a very immature 20 to 30-year-old. My wife and I are been together 20 years, but it took 10 years for us to get married because it took me a long time to grow up. And even when we got married, I hadn't grown up at that point. But I had grown up enough for Jenny to be like, okay, let's take the next
When you
step in
say
our
grow
relationship.
up, like do you mean like partying and stuff like that? Or
Yeah,
like okay,
being
okay.
focused on my life
Fun?
and
Like
saving money
okay.
and future goals and paying the bills on the house and wanting to have a family and looking forward instead of just looking at today. And yeah, being way too invested in my friends and what we're doing 3 days a week together. And all that took a long long time to purge from my system. And I don't take any of it. I don't regret any of it because I needed to get it all out. Like my wife Jenny was ready to be an adult at 18. I wasn't ready to be an adult until I was 30, 32. And I had the luxury of, some people don't, and sometimes I have this guilt because there's other people that grow up in a certain situation where they don't have that luxury to take that long to grow up. But I did. And so I it took me a really long time to purge a lot of that stuff from my lifestyle. And so then even when we got married and then we had a kid, that was the tipping point, is when I had a kid. It That forces you into a different level of emotional maturity because you now have a little baby sitting in your house that depends on you. And your mannerisms and the way you act and the way you react to things and the way you could conduct yourself and carry yourself, your
Were you
kid
the
is.
first of our friends to have a kid? I think you were, right?
I
Who had
I
a kid before? I think you were the first, right?
Christian, I think, had kids
Oh,
before
okay.
us,
All right.
and
All right.
and I just went golfing with him recently, and our whole group. I don't think I'm speaking out
I
of
think I'm the only one out of our group that doesn't have a kid or is
maybe.
married or
Well,
anything.
and I don't think I'm speaking out of class here when I say that our group in particular, we all took a long time to grow up. We
Yeah. You
did,
know what's
and
so like what what age did you stop like partying? Cuz for me, people can't believe when I tell them like how much I used to party. They look at me and look at my straight edge lifestyle and they just can't believe it when I tell them, which is so funny because we were we were wild, like we were super wild
yep,
and we partied hard.
yep. Yeah, I would say 30. I mean, Jenny and I have been married for 10 years now, and I'm 38. So I guess that was when I was 28. But even after we got married, it took me like a year into our marriage to like stop, and like realize, okay, I have a real responsibility to her.
Do you mind me talking about like drinking and stuff like that?
No, of course not.
Okay, all right. So
I talk about this stuff on a show
okay, all
that
right,
a
cool,
hundred
cool, cool.
thousand
Because
people listen to.
I don't mind talking about it either. And it's kind of refreshing. So I think that I probably stopped partying, like with drinking and stuff, sooner than everyone else just because of the bodybuilding. The bodybuilding expedited that. And so like I was more like mid 20s when I really started getting like serious about all the bodybuilding stuff. But when we were like in our party days, I never saw anyone be able to drink as much as you and like survive. Like
Yeah.
you would walk around with a giant bottle of Jack Daniels and you would drink it and not like fall down, which is, I mean, every once in a while it would get away from you, like
Yeah.
every once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But you were able to just tolerate like a lot of a
Yeah,
lot of toxic.
we conditioned ourselves pretty well, and the
Yeah.
whiskey for whatever reason, and I'm still kind of like this to this day. I can have a few and be fine unless I don't eat. But yeah, I don't know. We had conditioned ourselves pretty well, and honestly, I think it was just a coping mechanism for all of us because we didn't have direction. So it was our way of hiding from the stresses we all probably had inside our heads while we were at home by ourselves, sitting there thinking about what we're going to do with the rest of our lives.
I do
And
think there's something to be said though for like getting all of that stuff out of the way. Like when I think about it, I have I am grateful for all of those experiences. I wouldn't take it back at all. And I feel very lucky that I'm like I don't feel the urge to really, revisit, but I'm so glad that I did
yeah,
because there's something to be said for doing that. That way you don't have to think about it. Have you ever seen where people like don't do that and later in life they
yes.
do like a
And
full
so
180?
but that's why I always like when we talk about this stuff, this is our personal experiences, and this is why not everyone can take the exact roadmap because I don't expect other people to like. It's not a. This isn't an advice to me. This isn't advice to hey, do it this way because this is
Yeah.
how I got to work. Because not everybody
Right.
can. Not every. It's a privileged thing that we had where
We
we
also grew
had.
up in a real tight, like small little community where we all went. So this is so rare. And I was talking about this on a previous podcast with someone. And I've talked about this in general, whether I'm like going on a date or meeting a stranger, whatever, and the conversation comes up. And I talk about my friend group and how I'm still in contact with everybody now that I'm older. And that is so rare. A lot of people don't have that where they're in contact with their childhood friends. Like the fact that we're all at each other's weddings, like I was at your wedding, Jake's wedding, all these different people's weddings, everyone still talks. And we went to elementary school. That's like super rare these days.
Yeah, I took a lot of pride in that. I certainly did. I mean, when we got married, Jenny and I, I had all of us go to our elementary school for
Yeah.
pictures.
I
Like
still got the pictures.
Yeah, like that I took a lot of pride in that. So it was, growing up was hard because I never wanted to let go a lot of that stuff. But at some point, and we had how many people tell us, "Oh, it's not always going to be like this," and
It's weird
we
though.
didn't believe them. But
No, you don't.
it did kind of come to fruition, at least from my standpoint. I had, and this wasn't even a disrespect to the people I grew up with, but I did have to and you did for a segment of your life where you have to separate yourself. Like it was almost like a necessity to separate yourself or myself from all of that and just close off those relationships so I could grow up on my own and learn how to become a man and a husband and a father, because I wasn't able to do that with my group as it was, because I felt like I was always just going to be that same person. Like we all had our roles, and I was the sports crazy loud, and like it when you've been together as a group for 20-25 years, it's hard to then morph into something else within that role because your
Well,
friends
also,
only
you
know
don't
you
always
as
have
that
the
person.
same stuff in common. As you get older, you start venturing out into other avenues and you have different passions. Some people don't find passions. And I do feel like the people that don't find passions kind of stagnate a little bit and kind of stay in that lifestyle, where people that do have certain passions or just getting really involved in their career and, have families, the natural progression of life is that everyone kind of starts to take their own path.
Yep.
One thing I've noticed though, and I think this is really cool, is there are some people that you talk to regularly. There are some people that you talk to every day. There are some people that you don't ever talk to until you see them. And maybe that's every year, maybe that's every couple years. But one thing about that is when you see each other, it's like no time has gone by at all. That's always like there's definitely a couple people in our friend group that when I see them, we don't speak like on the phone or in
Right.
person. But when I see them every year or 2 years or whatever, it's like you're picking right up where you left off. And that to me is like a sign of a long lasting
Yep,
friendship.
100%. That's knowing, yeah, that's knowing a person, like, and
Yeah.
that's our whole group. I mean, I haven't talked to Pete in a year. Not everybody knows Pete, but we know Pete,
Yeah.
and
We don't have
but
many listeners yet, so it's
well,
fine.
regardless, everybody has a Pete and a Christian, and everybody has a bet. Everybody has their
Why
friend
is
group.
that, dude? Like, why does everyone have these just names that are like
Right,
Mike, Mikey,
right,
Greg?
exactly.
These are all such standard names, and every group has them. Like, why?
Yep.
Why is that?
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the thing that was unique about our group was how many of us there were. Like everybody
Yeah.
has that group, but most of those groups are like 4 or 5 kids. For us,
Yeah.
it was 30 of the craziest people you could ever meet in your entire life. And it would really create some,
Aren't you glad we didn't have social media back then?
dude, I would not have the job I have today if
Me
social
neither.
media was around back then. 1000%,
I mean, we
because of
got into
how
trouble as it was. Imagine having a digital footprint of all of the bad decisions
you
you made.
You're 100% right. I mean, my life, I'd be in jail somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's safe to say that none of us would be able to be a politician.
Well, and that's why for
That's for sure.
me, like my daughter's 5 now, and I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to push as
Yeah,
far
how's
as
that
I
going to
can to
work?
keep her from social media and a phone and a tablet. She doesn't have any of that stuff.
What is
She's
like
a
the normal age for them to like? I don't know anything about that. So like, what is
yeah.
the normal age for them to start using that shit?
I mean, every parent's different, and I don't judge other parents. It's not a one size fits all thing. It's hard. All I know is that I didn't let her touch phones even as a little kid, and I think it's every parent's instinct at times to give their kid a tablet. When you're going out to eat, or you're on a plane, or you're in the car, because it gives them something to do, and you rationalize, oh well, there's these interactive games that are teaching them things, and that's how you kind of rationalize that this isn't like YouTube. This is a game they're playing and it's better. But to me, I saw her behavioral, waves, and I didn't like what I was seeing. So pretty
Just because they're
quickly,
getting dopamine from the
yeah,
tablet.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep. So I
yeah.
so I took it from her, and we were expecting this like full-fledged war from her about it because how it was dictating her behavior and her emotional stress. We took it from her, and to our surprise, this was like when she was around 2 or 3, and she'd only had it for like 6 months or whatever. She never said anything about it, and before you knew it, she was into coloring and painting and building these blocks. She loves that I'm a bricklayer, and she would build these houses out of these magnet tiles and take me into the room to show me and stuff. And for us, and like I said, I don't judge any other parents for what they do. I'm not one of those parents that when we're out to dinner, just because my kid doesn't have a tablet and theirs does, that I'm like looking down on them. But I wish there was a little more regulation to take it out of the parents' hands as far as when that decision is, because I just think it's unfair to push this on kids this early in their life and take a chunk out of their imagination and their development. um and to me, it's a dangerous thing. My wife's a nurse practitioner, and she talks to kids every day, and they talk about how high depression levels are up, how low, kids don't do drugs anymore, kids don't have
Yeah,
sex anymore,
go
they
out
don't
and do drugs and have sex. What's wrong
right,
with you
like they
kids?
don't,
That's what
well,
we
and
did.
it's not even those two things specifically, it's just experiencing
They're because they're
life.
not
Go
leaving the house.
go
That's what
out
it
and get in
is.
trouble, and don't let it be on
Yeah.
social media, but that's the problem, is social media is documenting everything. So like for us, with Addie, it's just about, I don't want her to have any kind of digital footprint, like you were saying. That's the only reason I came on this tangent. And it's like, it's important to me to kind of be strict on that and see how far I can push it. She's 5 now, so it's easy for me to say that while I control her environment from home. But
Yeah,
the
wait
more
till
she
middle
gets,
school.
right, when she gets into school and her other
Every
kids,
kid's
but
got a phone and an
right, and she
Instagram.
has a neighbor friend that has a phone, and
Yeah.
but we haven't reached that stage yet where she's drawing a line in the sand that she has to have this stuff.
You
Because
ever notice how like kids look like older now? Like you ever look at like when we were in high school or whatever, dude, we looked like babies, dude.
right, well,
We
I
look
think a
like
lot of
babies.
well, and I think a lot of that has to do with we weren't worried about how as much, like I'd go to the salon and get a
Specifically our friend group though. Our friend group, we really looked young.
right. Well, because I don't think we were like when I went and got my haircut, I really didn't care how it looked. I just needed my haircut. When I went to the mall, like yeah, Abercrombie was a big thing, but
Yeah.
like dressing, how you dressed was just whatever you liked.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, like really doing the research on what the entire country looks like, and
Yeah.
so like, we were joking earlier about TikTok. You see these kids doing these like dance routines to these songs, and they're so elaborate and like so detailed, and they're like good at dancing. And if you
Yeah.
did, you'd show kids doing those dance routines in the early
The
2000s, and we looked
Macarena.
like, right, we looked like fools, but we didn't know that we looked like fools, and we didn't know that
Yeah.
we dressed like, cheesy kids, and we didn't know our haircuts looked
You
bad.
know what's funny
But
too?
these
Like it
kids, they're more self-aware about all that stuff, and
you'll
that's
see
why they
like
look
you'll
different.
see like a girl like you'll okay say like you see like a girl walking down the street or whatever, and she probably looks like I don't know 20 something, but then you see the kid that she's walking with, like a boy, and the boy looks 12, so you know the girl's probably the same age. It's
Right.
like it's so funny seeing like all the age differences and everything like that, because boys look younger during those ages. Like remember when you'd be at like a middle school dance and you'd be dancing with your date, and then your date's like way taller than
Yeah.
you.
100%.
But you bring up a good point, and that point is like being on your phone. Like, how much are you on your phone with
A
Twitter?
lot.
And I mean, you got to be on your phone all day.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
what's your
tough.
screen time?
Yeah, it's bad. And every week I'll get the update report, and it'll be like,
Yes.
you have used your phone 2 hours and 39 minutes more than the week before, and
You're
I'm
like,
like,
don't tell me. Just don't give me
that's
the
bad.
report.
Yeah, and I already know that the week before was bad.
Now, are you
So
on your phone in bed, like
yeah,
before bed? So
it's 20.
how do you feel like that affects your sleep?
Yeah, it's definitely messed with me in a big way.
What's like
Because I was
some of the major
always
ways?
what's that?
What are some of the major ways that it's
Yeah,
messed with you?
sleep is definitely one of them. Um, my emotional stress, being my job and my career being so directly tied to my following on social media, um, and specifically just the one media with Twitter. And like, even when there's like a glitch on the app, and the app is down for a little bit, and it says cannot retrieve activity at this time when it flashes up on the screen, like, I'm worried that my account got suspended, and like, it'll take me a second to like calm myself down because I know how much. And so it bugs me. I honestly resent. It's gotten to a point where I resent how much I need it.
It's a
Before,
double-edged sword, isn't it?
yeah, before, when I so what's funny is, when I first started to get into it, like, I've always, like, even before 2018, and I was just really into sports and social media. I was already a little starting to go down a road where it was going to be too much. But then when I started it started becoming a means to an end. What's funny about it is, I thought that I was playing social media, that I was like, oh, I've mastered this game, and I've figured out the Da Vinci Code of how I can get a following and how I can eventually get a job. And I use social media to my benefit. And I'm so smart. Look at how I was able to do
It's
this.
like the gambler that's in Vegas and they're like, I got this shit figured out.
Right.
Casinos
And
don't run
what's
me.
funny is, and I learned this from that documentary on Netflix, The Social Experiment. What I realized watching that was, this internet is a dirty devil, and it actually created this stuff for me to keep coming back to it. So while I did find a way into a job and a better life for my family, that is true. The internet is really what created all of this, because they're just looking for my eyeballs and my time, my screen time on their app. So these algorithms are just creating all this different content, all these different job opportunities, and all this different stuff, just to keep feeding us into the beast.
Right.
And I've played right into their hands.
It's the algorithm. So I was talking about this on, so now this will be a couple podcasts back with Kyle Lamb. And I was telling him about the social dilemma, because how these apps work is they know what you like and they know your interests. Even if you click on an ad accidentally, it's going to show you more stuff like that. So it starts to curate an entire rabbit hole for you to go down based on your attention, because all it works on is your attention. Whatever you watch and watch more of, it's going to show you things like that and do what it can to keep you on the platform. That is their main goal, is to keep you on their platform. So when you start noticing that, because I've had that happen plenty of times, and I have to kind of treat the algorithm as my own tool and say, don't recommend me this, don't recommend me that, refresh, start a clean slate, because I can tell when it's starting to show me things that I wouldn't necessarily be watching otherwise.
Right.
And that's good for some things. Like, you want stuff that you are interested in, but it can slowly over time morph your opinions even. And reinforce your own opinions and kind of become a little echo chamber for you
Yep.
because it's only going to show you things that get your attention
Yep.
or things that fire you up, which is why some people walk around pissed off all day. It's
Yep.
because they're getting shown stuff that pisses them off.
Yeah.
And whether you like something or it pisses you off, it has your attention.
Yep. No, I completely agree. It creates people getting irritable, even if they don't realize it, it's, it's the slot machine. That's what they say, right? And it feels that way when you're constantly, your notifications and everything else, and constantly seeing the reaction to stuff.
I
And
have
it's
I
the
have a I have a deep question about this. How has that affected your relationship?
yeah, it's definitely created, a monster with that because it's something that I don't know. It's hard to say because if you had asked me that 6 months ago, there'd probably been a different answer. But now that it's created a better life for our family, like I think Jenny is as shocked as anyone that this actually worked out. Like she always believed in me, but more so she she just let like she was just such a loyal person to me that she just let me kind of do my thing.
Which I think that's so important to have a partner that if your partner doesn't believe in you, I don't know how that lasts because
Right.
that will undoubtedly build up resentment because when things do happen, because when you're on a mission and you're passionate about something and you go all in, you'll do anything
Right.
to reach that goal, no matter how long it takes. I
Yeah.
remember when I was um, getting my coaching going, it didn't matter if I was at a movie theater on a date. Hey, I got to run to the bathroom real quick. And I'm in the bathroom shooting off emails, telling people, eat this amount of carbs, protein, fats this week and making dietary changes or, there were holidays that I passed up on. There were events that I passed up on. And having that support from your partner and knowing that they believe in you, even if it's not going to change what you do because you're going to grind and you're going to do whatever it takes anyway, but having that like okay, this person believes in me and they're willing to make my life easier and
Right.
give me a pass on some of these things. When you're, it's Friday, because it's not uncommon for it to be Friday, Saturday night when people are out doing stuff and you're working.
Yep. No,
So having someone that has your back, that I mean, that's like a key part of
well,
it,
that's
right?
why again, I'm not afraid to tell anybody my recipe because not everybody's got a Jenny. You know,
Yeah.
I used to tell people all the time, like, "How do you get to do all this stuff?" I'm like, "Get yourself a Jenny. I've got a Jenny. If you got a
Yeah.
Jenny, then you can do some of these things. If you don't have a Jenny, you probably have to grow up." And I didn't. I got to play in the sandbox a little longer than most adults. And so when I signed my contract here 2.5 months ago, I kept telling them like I would do this for free. I do not care about the money. I truly don't. We have a good life here. Nice house and a couple cars and a kid and nice backyard and a pool. Like I could do this for free and it wouldn't change my circumstances. And that was a lot of my advantage in getting as high as I got in the industry as fast as I did. Because I got to take some shortcuts, not having to do these little jobs just to make ends meet, so to speak. But when I signed the contract, I mean, it was basically what I told them was, whatever you guys offer me, I just want it to be fair to my wife, not to me, because that's the truth. Is she deserved it for all those years of sacrificing how me letting me chase this silly passion and me going to all these games and me always on my phone and social media this and that and it was a lot and I don't know if any of us I think both of us are equally as shocked that it turned into something and we both had pretty an emotional moment when we realized it was going to turn into something because it's one of those things that for me now I can't wait to show my daughter like I always wanted Addie to take a few things from me like my spirit, my energy and my humor and some of, but I wanted her mostly to follow Jenny's lead. And when this happened, it was like, damn, like, it sounds so cliche, but following your passion, following your dream, and those things. I want her to learn this story and what it took, and our our partnership, me and Jenny. I want Addie to understand that those were the things that led me to this moment, to provide for a better life, and not settle. Yeah, I could have been a bricklayer the rest of my life, and I would have been proud of that. I would have been happy. It's a great job, and I recommend anybody that's getting out of school that doesn't have a direction to get into construction. It's a good place to go, but it wasn't. It My passion was in sports, and my dream was bigger than that, and so I didn't let it go. I never completely let it go. So
Do you feel like, so like, yeah, you could have been happy, but maybe it's not like, when you're passionate about something, there's a difference between just like coasting and being happy, or knowing like I'm feeling fulfilled. Like there is a distinct difference in feeling fulfilled. So
yeah,
do you think that I mean, is that what you were kind of like chasing, was like
yeah. I mean,
fulfillment?
being a bricklayer, there was a self of accomplishment when the day was done. Being proud of the wall you built or the house you built. Building some friendships with the people you worked with was always something I enjoyed. That brotherhood. But typically, your bricklaying boss or your construction boss doesn't appreciate you very much. I mean, that's not across the board. It's a generalization I'm making,
Yeah.
but for the most part, that's how it goes. And that was hard for me because I just wanted I wanted to be appreciated by my bosses when I was laying brick, and very rarely was I ever appreciated. I was treated pretty poorly even when I was willing to show up on weekends and work on holidays, and those were doing those kind of things without being asked, only because I enjoyed the job. I enjoyed laying brick. I enjoyed building scaffold. I enjoyed making mortar and stocking brick. I enjoyed all that stuff, but what I didn't enjoy was my boss telling me to screw off as I'm walking off the job site every day. And there couldn't be a bigger difference with what I'm doing now, because these sports people, they're media people, it's just such a different world. And so my hard work ethic that I have, or at least feel like I have, the littlest thing I'll do with this now, it's like I'm a little kid. They're like, "Great job, Greg." And I'm just like, I didn't do anything. I just showed up to work today. Like it wasn't that
You
hard.
feel
Like
you're like, wow, people actually appreciate me.
right.
Wow.
And so that for me is what's nice about it. What's so
Yeah.
rewarding is to now work for a company and bosses that aren't screaming at you, aren't threatening to fight you, aren't,
Mm.
threatening to fire you, and it's the opposite. I bust my ass for these guys, and it turns into something. I don't say no to anything. They ask me to be the event coordinator on tailgates. Yes. Be a producer. Absolutely. Teach me this. Teach me that. Teach me how to be on screen. I'll go wherever you want. I don't care what time it is. I'll work my ass off because I just come from a different place where hard work wasn't as appreciated. So
But don't you feel
now
like you work when you're passionate about something, like really passionate, when it's, I mean, something that you go to sleep thinking about and you wake up, like you said, you wake up excited. Don't you feel like you work harder and longer? You put in more hours when you're fully invested. I mean, there's not a lot of jobs that, if it's not like your own thing and you're not in love with it, like I said, you're not going to walk out of the movie theater when you're on a date and, start fucking with your emails, or, be like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm still working. It's not like you're getting, paid per hour or whatever. Like, so don't you feel like you end up working harder? It's,
yeah.
but it's kind of feels like you're playing a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
I
because
don't
it's
I
different.
it's laughable to me that they pay me anything, especially what they pay me. I mean, I cuz yeah, this is all fun to me. And
Yeah,
none of it is serious. None of it is hard. You know?
that's awesome, man.
So
That's
yeah,
that's that's so that's dude, that is so rare. Like it is such a So like how has that affected your just life, like your daily life, like your overall happiness? I mean, I know you said you tend to be more stressed with the phone and all that, but like how has like going in on your passion, how is that like that has to have changed your overall happiness in some way, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, being a bricklayer was a little easier as far as time wise because I worked so close to home. A lot of the
Mm.
houses I laid brick on were right down the street from my house, so I'd be home by 3:30, and then like I'd have all day. My schedule is much different with this and changes every day.
Do you go
And
into a, I mean, do you do things from your house or mostly, or do you go into
sometimes we'll do remote shows from home every
okay,
once in a while, but most of it's in studio in
okay.
Chicago, right down the street from the United Center where the Bulls play. And
And for people that don't know, commuting to Chicago can be a bitch sometimes.
yeah, it can be. It just depends on what time I have to go in.
Right.
Being from Indiana, you're going against the grain sometimes of what the rush hour traffic
Would you
is.
ever want to live in the city? I
No, I
when
don't
I
think
lived in the
so.
city, I lived in, remember like in college for a couple of years, I lived in Chicago.
Yep.
That was enough.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah.
enough.
I mean, if we didn't have a kid, maybe. But I like where we are. I've always liked the region, Northwest Indiana. But um, so it's kind of weird. I was less busy when I had the brick lane job and doing this part time. And I was certain that when I gave up bricklaying, that I was going to have more time to be at home and be with my family. It's actually so far, and it's still early in this whole thing because I quit bricklaying full time in June. But so far, I am insanely more busy than I ever have been in my entire life. And it has taken a sacrifice of not being able to see Addie and Jenny as much as
I
I
was gonna
would like.
ask like what sacrifices have you, because we haven't even talked about like during this whole time you've been working on weight loss too. So
Yep.
you've had a full, I mean, you're down like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I was 276 when we started in April, and I got all the way down to 230. So,
had a
I'm
little
now
hiatus.
right now we're back up to 238, so it's like
but I mean
try,
it happens. So I mean, throw in there special occasions, different types of stuff that comes up in your everyday life. So like what sacrifices have you had to make even with like, so you're balancing that and family and weight loss. I mean, what has that looked like for you?
yeah, it's time. I've sacrificed my time. I don't have time for anything anymore. I have friends that won't get a text back from me for weeks, and sometimes they'll take it personally, like, oh, you don't respond. My fantasy league that I've ran for 15 years for football, fantasy football league, they are literally ready to mutiny me out of the league. They literally had a group meeting the other day where they were cursing my name because I won't set my rosters. And I'm like,
uh,
guys, I don't have time to talk to my daughter, let alone set my roster in fantasy football. I do not care. And they're like, Jake's like, you're ruining the league. You're like, it's creating an imbalance and it's for money. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. How's that sound? Like, but that's what it's become, is I don't have time for all those little things anymore because I only have time to focus on what I have in front of me as far as the work or my family or working out, and that's it. And um so yeah, but I just look at it like, hey, this is my opportunity, this is my moment. There's some sacrifice that's being taken place, but was I better off as a bricklayer? No, because half the time I'd come home from work so pissed off because I wanted to get in a fist fight with my boss and I wanted to quit my job so I could go lay brick for
was your
some.
boss, I mean, was your boss like a dick? I mean, he sounded, I
Yeah,
mean, okay, all right.
he's a hard ass, and he didn't like that I would walk up to the job every day with confidence and opinions and would work hard.
So you
A
guys would
lot of
butt
it's
heads.
yeah, oh yeah, we our personalities clashed big time. We there was a brotherhood there, and I would have taken a bullet for the guy, but there were also moments where I would have given him the bullet too because he was just driving me crazy, and I'm sure I know he felt the exact same way. So there were some days I'd come home and Jenny would have to talk me off the ledge while I'm in the
Mm.
shower because I was so upset about how I was being treated. So we don't have those conversations anymore. Every day I come home and we talk about how much stuff I have to do, but there's no more
Does
conversation
Jenny
about
like sports? Is she into sports? Like
no, she
how does that work? Do you guys
invests.
talk
No,
about
if I
sports?
if I wasn't if she was married to somebody that wasn't into sports, she'd never pay attention to it. But because I'm emotionally invested in it, she'll find a way to get emotionally invested in
Because
it.
she loves
Right.
you.
Right.
You
And
reciprocate?
yeah, we watch Below Deck. Like
I
we
don't know what
uh
below deck is, but I'm assuming it's some
Vanderpump Rules
okay.
is so we have this other
Yeah.
section where it was something that she was passionate about. And I know that's silly, it's just TV shows, but that's kind of our time when we're not
Yeah.
putting Addie to sleep. We have, an hour or two to watch a couple shows.
Because you've
And
been with Jenny,
20
correct
years,
me if I'm wrong. How long?
20 years.
And yeah, that's, I mean, since we were in what grade?
18 we were 18
Yeah, wow.
and 17, 18. We started dating right before I turned 18, so I'm about to turn 38. We've been together for 20 years, married for 10.
Can you believe we're 38?
Right. Over and so yeah, I mean, when we crossed the threshold of we've been together for more than half of our lives, like we
That's
both looked at
crazy.
each other like that makes me sick. But
Yeah, but I mean, it's safe to say you guys know each other and you've been through, I mean,
yeah.
been through
No,
a lot, 20
we
years.
have a very special and unique bond. It's a partnership, it's a friendship,
Hmm.
it's a marriage, it's love, it's hate, it's everything. And I try to, everybody's marriage and path is different, but I try to tell people like, you know, um, to me, it's about an authentic relationship where you know everything about each other, where you know all your deepest, darkest secrets about somebody. You accept them for their worst traits and you love them for their best. That's what marriage is all about. And we've done a pretty good job at that. I think Addison, our daughter, has really strengthened us. It's given us a purpose to because before it was like Jenny had her direction as a nurse, I had my wandering direction as a bricklayer slash sports fanatic, but we didn't have a goal other than have paying for the bills on the house. We didn't have a goal that we attacked together, and having Addie has brought this you know you know this mutual goal of making sure she's the greatest success and nicest person and loving caring child we can possibly make her out to be. And so it has strengthened us in a way that never would have otherwise. So we're grateful. I'm very grateful for Addie. She's changed our lives in a big way.
Man, yeah, that's incredible. As I'm seeing everyone having kids, my brother just had a kid, so I'm a new
Wow.
uncle. I know. And so it's very interesting to see everybody having children. Some of our friends are having two kids and have two kids. And going from elementary school, middle school, high school, college, weddings, now children, multiple children. It's interesting to see the progression and, even seeing kids playing together when we all grew up together. We're in an interesting time in our lives. How do you feel about getting older? Like, if you, would you ever want to go back in time, or do you like life as it is now?
No, I would love to go back to high school. I would love to
Would you
go back
really?
to yeah, I would love to go back to elementary school, high
Would
school.
you
Yeah. I
tell me
miss
why? What do you miss about
I
it?
miss the simplicity of the 90s. I miss not I don't like as much you would think I love social media. I resent it now. I do it and I'm
Do
addicted.
you?
Yeah, I'm addicted to it. It's part of my job now, which is just an excuse because even if it wasn't a part of my job, I'd probably be on it just as much.
Well, you do
Um,
have an addictive personality, as do I.
yes. And so I'm not afraid to admit I'm very addicted to it. I've created relationships and obviously a job and life changing stuff from it, but I resent it now. There's nothing I look forward to more than the day I can take my phone and throw it in the lake
That
and
is
never.
so super interesting to me because you're right. You would think that you like it because you're so consistent with it and you're on it, you're constantly
Yeah.
using it. So do you look at it just almost as like a burden then now?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that, yeah, it's a burden. It's not something like I like promoting my stuff that I do. I like Facebook and Instagram for putting pictures of my daughter. Because I just think that's just a good inventory to save all that stuff. And,
Mm-hmm.
it helps chronicle my journey with her and our life and my life with Jenny and everything. So I enjoy the organization of
Okay, so
that.
maybe like the personal stuff you like, but the grind, the
Yes.
constant.
Yes.
Is it Twitter? I've heard
No,
that
it's
Twitter.
it's all it's all of
Oh, it's
it.
all of it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
all of
all
it.
of it because I have to do it on all the platforms now.
So how do you get away
And
from it? I mean, how does
I
that?
don't. I literally don't. Like we went to
So
Florida and everybody was like unplug. I was incapable of I unplugged for one day and the next day I was back on it
now
because
during that one day, were you feeling like a draw to your phone? Like I
yeah,
need to
yeah,
check.
I
I need to.
had to check it
So
because
have you heard of like detoxes? Like how do you like? I would say not. You can't stop it because you literally use it for your business,
right.
and there's nothing better for promotion than social media. I mean, social media is amazing for promotion, but like it does need to be managed.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
how do
it's
you
hard.
like
It's
make? I mean, does it just get so bad that at some point you get forced to manage it?
Well, Jenny gets worried that there's going to come this day that I have a complete meltdown about it. I don't know. My brain is moving so fast at all times that I don't know when that day will come that I'm actually just going to just get completely fizzled out and have this like mental breakdown from it. But yeah, I don't know the answer to it. I can't. I literally can't unplug from it. In Florida, that's a week before the NFL season was starting, and we needed to promote a tailgate. We needed to promote our shows and our new shirts that we were putting out, and like I take a personal responsibility that stuff has to get done, and I'm not going to depend on anyone else that I work. I have to do this, and um, there's a part of that helps me jump that's going to get me ahead in this industry because it's one of those things where I don't have an off button, and a lot of people aren't wired like me, where I'm just always on the go.
Right.
I'll do for Sunday. We have a
Yeah.
Bears game, and I'll be there at 8 in the morning for a live show we're doing at a place in Oak Lawn, and we'll do a pregame show, watch the game with fans, do a postgame show. I won't get home till 8 at night, and then
Dude,
guess
you
what?
were always like that. I remember when we would drink and party, and you would be up at 7 o'clock in the morning, like
Yep.
going. And I was always like, how is this dude doing this? Like, we'd be like hungover, like
Right.
how are you like
It's just my. I
you
mean, I
didn't
mean,
like
I,
sleep a
I was
lot.
born ADHD, attention
Mm.
deficit hyperactive disorder. So that's a part of it. Is it feeds that. It's just I don't have an off button, and so it's part of what makes me special in this industry, but it's also a part of what is a sacrifice in my personal life because it's a lot on me. It's a lot on my wife to deal
Mm.
with and watch and observe and help and support. And so it's just the whole thing is a maze that we kind of try to navigate. But yeah,
Have
it's
you
like
ever experienced burnout? Like, were you
I
like, you know how like YouTubers, like a lot of I've seen that a lot of YouTubers that grind for however many years or whatever, and that content is like a daily, momentary grind, probably with you with things because things change in the moment with sports. Like it's like literally play by play. So have you ever experienced like a burnout or like you said, like a mental like break? Like, has your mind ever been like, No, this is this
A
like
couple years
anxiety, stuff
ago,
like that.
right before I started with CHGO, I almost scaled back social media completely and almost got to a point where I was only going to do the podcasting and stay off social media completely. I was like almost to that point. And then CHGO became a company, and I could tell that there was this light at the end of the tunnel that I was going to get a job there. And it went literally in that moment the complete opposite way, where now
Double
I'm
down.
never right. Now I'm like
Yeah.
as invested in this as I
Yeah.
ever have been. And it only gets more and more and more. Like I went from, a year ago I had like 9,000 followers. This shit sounds so stupid and trivial, but it's just the way the game is. And now when I passed 10,000 followers, I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about how many followers I have anymore, because once you hit 10,000, it sounds silly, but on social media, especially in sports social media, it kind of elevates you to a different level
It
of
gives you social proof, right?
right. Like, okay, this person is legitimate. Well, in the last 3 months, I've gone from 10,000 to 20,000. And so it's like you said, it's my way of scaling how big I'm getting. Not only that, but the people in the industry see this stuff and they're looking at this. It's all a competition, it's a
Mm-hmm.
race. And so for me, the man of the people, I'm constantly interacting with these people at all times, where media industry guys, they're not like that. They ignore everyone on social media.
Right. They don't hit the like button or comment,
Right.
reply to their
They put
comment,
their
get a
content
dialogue
on there
going.
for other people to read, but they're not. I'm like the guerrilla warfare, where I am like one person at a time,
Mm-hmm.
going and meeting new people, finding new fans, finding new followers every single day, and it doesn't stop.
Right.
It's I think part of why I'm going to go far in this industry, because I'm hungry and I'm obsessed and I'm crazy and I'm nonstop. But then there's that other part of me that I have to be careful about how that is a balance within my life at home. 100%.
I think as long, whenever I think about anyone that gets to their top of whatever, a musician,
Yep.
uh, whatever, any an actor, whatever, they are obsessed, and you have to obsess to get to that level, and you do have to have that like eye of the tiger, but knowing when to, because there is a time to step on the gas, but also if you're not good up here and you do hit that wall, that could also come crumbling down. So knowing yourself, you're pretty self-aware. Like
Yeah, that's
some of the
something
things that you say are pretty self-aware.
well, the things that's something I've always been good at, even all the way back to high school, my craziest moments. I knew why I was the way I was. I did do some therapy in high school, and I know some people have encouraged me to do therapy nowadays. Like what we're doing right now is therapy to me. And it probably would benefit me to talk to somebody. I always kind of struggle with the idea that therapy, they're not going to fix me. It's just about talking about these things.
That's
You
not what
know,
therapy is, though. I've used therapy many times, and so whenever things for me get, we'll just say dark, because I do have severe depression, and so what severe depression and OCD, and I have an addictive personality, which you and I align with very much. I mean, dude, what do you think bodybuilding fuels? The nice thing about bodybuilding is that it's never ending, and I became obsessed with it, and it took over a lot of different areas, and it became a productive thing for me to obsess on. But the way that severe depression works is that once every couple years, something, we'll say life changing, can happen to me, and that will trigger the severe depression. When I talk about depression, you've heard of like, okay, I'm feeling depressed today. That's not what I'm talking about. Some people they're just kind of numb, they're feeling depressed, but they can function. That's not what severe depression is. Severe depression is, the only way that I could describe it is that you don't want to go to sleep because you don't want to wake up. And the only thing that's going to stop you from putting a gun in your mouth is pulling yourself out of this hole, because you can't sustain it without help. And so I learned that early on, because I started taking medication when I think I was like 19. and or 19 or 20. It was my early years of college is when I got bad enough where I had to get on medication because the OCD got so out of control, and the OCD feeds the depression. So it's like you and I could be sitting here right now having this conversation. I am somewhere completely different. There's nothing that you can say that's going to register because I can't focus on anything other than what's going on in my life. And it could be something like there was a time where I was obsessed with I'm not far enough in my career. Like I would beat myself up so bad. Like the dialogue in my head was really unproductive because it doesn't help you. It just beats you down. And so when these times had come up, and they've come up several times, I'm pretty good at realizing when I need to utilize my tools. And so for me, like my tools to dig myself out of those dark holes are, well, bodybuilding and diet, that just stays. So it's funny sometimes when people talk about like depression, they're like, yeah, if you can change, just work on your diet or bodybuilding. That doesn't work for me. It's because that stuff always stays. That's just like bare bones for me to be like my best self is that stuff always stays. And I do all that through my depression. Because I have to, and it's hard too because I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. And so that definitely helps. And therapy and medication. So there's been many of my like depressive times where they have come because I'm like, okay, I'm feeling so good right now. I've been on medication for a while. Let me try. Let me just try. Let me just give this a shot. So I talk with my psychiatrist and we go, okay, let's lower the dose. Cause I'm on very small doses of SSRIs. And I have been since 19. So, but it's normal for over the span of your life for that to get increased because over the course of 5-6 years, your chemistry does get used to that. So I'll be like, all right, man, I'm feeling really good. I don't think I really want to give no medication a shot. And so we always cut down slowly. You don't just stop taking medication. That's just asking for trouble. But we always go, okay, don't make any decisions right now. Give it 6 months. So like when we decrease the dose, it takes time for that to get out of your system. And I have never made it 6 months without medication. I realize I have to be on that for the rest of my life. At this point, I don't even bother trying to decrease it. And so what ends up happening is I'm like, all right, I'm here. I know this place. I've been here many times, which is I've kind of gotten experienced with depression. It doesn't get easier. I just know what to expect. And so I always contact my doctor, say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. We need to do something. So we reintroduce the medication. And then on top of that, I do use therapy. And therapy to me, some people, will use it as like a tool. That's how I use it. It's not a permanent thing that I use. Like it never stays in my like bodybuilding, diet, lifestyle, all that. Also, doing what I love for a living is crucial to me being my best self. I have to I'm a passion driven person, and me doing what I love, which I've tried going for money and switching, it doesn't work. I have to be fully in love with what I'm doing. But therapy for brief bits of time where I throw everything in the kitchen sink at it and then I pull back. So it's one of those things where it might be only be in my regimen for a couple weeks. It might be in for a couple months, depending on what's going on in my life. But attacking it with everything, that is how I've always pulled myself out of those really, really dark spots. So I've had a lot of success with therapy. Now therapy, you can use it online, which would have been, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I always feel like if I go to therapy, then I'm gonna cause my therapist to have to go to therapy.
Dude, you don't think therapists use therapy?
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, imagine therapists by nature are empathic people. Imagine people coming to you every day and talk, divulging their trauma and their darkest, secrets and all of that negative energy.
Yeah.
They use therapists as well.
That's crazy.
Nobody's perfect, dude.
Yeah. That is funny to think about. Yeah, I never thought about it in that way because like I have always been someone that is introverted, self-aware, and so I understand why I do things and who I am, and I'm not afraid to admit who I am. So it's like, what can a therapist say to me that I don't already know? But Jenny talks to me a lot about this, like that's not what it is. It's like what you're saying, to just get this stuff, just like when we were talking about earlier
Yeah.
about purging partying out of your system. Sometimes you have to purge these thoughts out of your system too. And
Absolutely. And there is something to be said for talking. It's different than talking to like a friend or a parent or a partner. I mean, talking, because there is a certain amount of like, okay, like I'm dumping my baggage on you. But a therapist, that's what they're there for. And I even remember one of the therapists that I went and saw. I remember because I felt real bad, dude. I used to internalize everything. And I remember he was in Vietnam. And so when he was my age while I was in therapy, and so I used to tell him, I was like, I feel guilty talking to you about my problems that I'm having. When you were my age, you were a medic in Vietnam. I said, it makes me feel bad. Like, who am I to unload this on you when you were my age? Like, you were literally in a war. And one thing that he said that always stood out, he's like, it doesn't matter where you are in life or who you are, like you are allowed to have problems, and it doesn't make them, yeah, maybe they're not like, you're not getting blown up, but it doesn't make them not problems, and everybody has problems. And so that always stuck with me because like we do all have problems. And like I don't know if it's like, as men sometimes we kind of like just bury that shit, dude. Like just bury that. Like there's things I've tried burying, dude, and it does start to impact you, and things come out, dude, in different ways. Like they might be, you might blow up on someone at a traffic stop, or you might just have like whatever, like things that you internalize will always come out in different ways. And that's all energy. And so that energy gets, that energy has to come out. So talking to a complete stranger, because when you meet them, they're like complete strangers. It is, well, therapeutic. And also a lot of, if you find a good one, like they have some pretty good perspectives. And that's you don't go in there like, okay, solve my problem. That is, Jenny's right, that's not how therapy works.
no, yeah, to me it's like, yeah, I think I'll eventually go to it. It's just a matter of when I have the time.
Dude,
Like,
well, you know what though, with therapy too, one thing I noticed is because my parents, so I was a recluse when I was a kid. I was reckless. I mean, I got in a lot of trouble. Went to, got expelled from 2 high schools. Remember, I graduated from boarding school in Massachusetts. And so, I mean, my parents they would force me into therapy when I was young. Well, it didn't work because I didn't want to be there. Therapy only works if you want to be there. It's self
right.
improvement. It's like working out, dude. Like
Yep.
in diet, like I mean, from all of your weight loss experience, unless you want to do it, it ain't happening.
Yep. No, 100%. Yeah, it's all about the motivation, desire, will, consistency. Those are things I
Mm-hmm.
think that can be applied in anything we've been talking about here today. It's just one of those things. I've tried to get better at all those things. I was terrible at all of those things growing up. So it's just like trying to find that rhythm, to just keep building upon who I am at this
It's
point.
self-improvement, man. It never
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah.
Like, and the older we get, the more there is to improve. Like you said, you're not, you go, I'm flawed. I go, well, me too, man. Like me
Right.
too. Like, and so yeah, we can go on about that. But hey, man, I think we talked about a lot of good stuff. I'm really glad we got to have this conversation today because I really I love hearing about when people are passionate about stuff. It is one of my favorite things to talk about, even no matter what the interest is. And I've watched you do your thing for a while now. We've been working together for a while with the fitness side of things. And so, you've been telling me about all the different stuff and how busy you've been, and I've seen it online, and I've really been rooting for you. I've always enjoyed seeing you just do what you love, and I do think that there's doing what you're passionate about is I think it's a blessing in life, man. I
Yeah.
really do. It's a not everyone can do it. And I understand not being able to do it too. Like there's nothing wrong with working and not being passionate about. I think, as we're talking about all this, like I think it's both you and I have done things that are not passion related for our work. And even I've gone back to doing stuff when times got tough, or I thought like maybe I wanted to try and go for money. And, I always go back to what I love. And, that's not for everyone. And that's okay. I mean, it doesn't have to, everyone's journey
Well,
is
you got to do
different.
what you got to do to get by. You should like
Absolutely.
if you can't do something passionate that you're passionate about for money, you should always find something you're passionate about in life outside of your work. That's something I think I can give anybody advice to is find those passions and try to share them with somebody, whether it's your spouse or friend or kid. It doesn't have to be something that turns into a job, but having those passions are important because there's more to life than just paying the bills and stuff like that. But like I
Yeah.
said, that's easy for me to say in the situation. I have a unique situation where I have a good life. I have a good support system around me. So not every situation is cut from the same cloth, and I acknowledge that for sure. I know I know it's something I don't take for granted for sure. And for me, the way I look at all this stuff now is I'm just gonna every day I just appreciate that I was there, that I made it to the next day. I don't know if I'll ever get to a point where I don't appreciate it. Um, I every time I get to a different ladder on the rung, I'm sitting there like, okay, if this is enough, I can look back at my life and be happy. And then a year from now, I'll be even higher. And I say the same
Yeah.
thing over and over. And I would have been fine if it was just a hobby and never made a dollar from it. And now I'll be fine if this is the only job I ever get in this industry. And I can look back on it and say, you did that. But something tells me that a couple years from now, I'll be even higher on the ladder, and I'll just keep appreciating where I'm at in the
That's a
moment. And
beautiful thing though, man. Like that I mean, that's what life's about, dude. Like, of course, being happy with the journey is important. Like you don't ever want to be like, oh, I wish I was happier, because you're never going to be happy if that's the case, no matter how much money you make or how many rungs you climb or how far you get. So being happy is important during like the grind, but having a clear vision and purpose and overall like progression, dude, that's what it's about, man. Like just getting better in your craft over
yep.
time. That is the goal, man. That is really to me, that's what it's all about. Is it's not about like, okay, that final tier, because that just doesn't exist, but just getting better at what you're doing and growing, no matter how quick or slow, because things come in ebbs and flows. But right now, you are definitely on an awesome trajectory, and I could not be happier for you, man.
I appreciate that a lot, man. And you know how much I appreciate your support and help
Mm-hmm.
with what we're trying to do. Because you don't just train me, you're helping Jenny out, and that gives us another goal that we try to accomplish together, and we talk a lot about every day. So, finding those different things that we as a marriage and a partnership can attack together is something
Do you
that's
think
been
it's easier to do when you guys are both doing it together?
100%,
Oh, okay,
100%.
gotcha.
Like, not even like we've started. So when we first, because this is like the fourth time we've done your program, but this is the first time I think we're actually trying to stick to it and not just use you for 3 months and then throw you back to where you came from.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna get that reverse diet going this
yes,
time. Yep,
yes.
yep, yep.
So when we first started, we had to work out together. Like every workout we had to do side by side. Now we just are committed to doing the program together, but we don't always, because our schedules don't line up. We can't always, feasibly work out together. So we just keep each other in check. So that's been the next step in our evolution in this, is that we're not dependent and waiting on each other. Okay, now you do. Let's do our workout now. Like I'll do my workout at said time. She'll do her workout at a different time. We always, the dieting is something we attack together. We go grocery shopping together. And that's, like I said, something that's really helped us. And, you know, um, when you talk about depression and anxiety and stuff, like our weight is something that plays into that. So for us to be able to at least maintain our health and try to improve it, no matter how fast or slow, and that's been something like we've talked about a lot, me and you, that I have to accept, is not trying to get all these, rewards from working out right away, and let it be a slower, accept the process for
Mhm.
how it can be in a slower way than just those instant gratification
And
results.
I will say sometimes you have to go through that a couple times to kind of realize, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. That really quick, really aggressive, really fast pace, like immediate gratification that you're talking about, it's not sustainable and it doesn't last. And sometimes it's not uncommon for people to have to experience that a couple times, because nothing teaches as well as making mistakes.
Yep.
And we've all made mistakes when it comes to that stuff. So I do think those are some of the best lessons that you can possibly learn to add to your arsenal of experience.
Yep. So yeah, it's given me a focus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, my goals are just to be healthy for my daughter. One, that's my biggest goal. Healthy. With mind and body and spirit with Jenny and I, so we have a happy household. And then I guess like third or fourth or fifth down the list is it's nice to, when I can avoid not being called fat by everyone that
Yeah,
tunes
it's
into
got to
our
be
shows.
easy to like it's yeah, I remember when you told me you like
Oh,
you didn't want to be the
I've lost like 40, 50 pounds since April. And I was just saying it on the show today. Somebody yesterday in our comments, like to our YouTube link afterwards, was like, "Fat boy needs to da 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 da." I was like, "What the hell?" Like, what?
yeah, because
I'm still like,
in the pictures when that's not you anymore.
yeah. I'm
So,
like, come
but it
on.
has
But
to
that's
be
what's funny
easy.
is when I first lost. So when I had that weight on me, then I lost it. They were like, "Damn, Braggs looking slim." But now that I've maintained this weight for like 3 months, I'm back to people calling me fat again. So now I need to lose more weight so I can get back to the people on the show
It
saying,
has
"Damn,
to be
Braggs."
easy when you're so focused on your passion in any field. I mean, because I talk to people all the time about their different professions and their priorities, and it has to be easy to let the health and fitness side go to the
Yep.
wayside when you're so focused on one thing that is also so time consuming. Because I mean, working out and diet, that it does take added effort. Not that the effort's not worth it. Obviously, it's totally worth it, but it does take time and effort and energy, and it has to be a priority. So it's probably not too uncommon for people in your field to over time become obese and to become very unhealthy.
Well, for writers or producers or people that aren't on screen, a lot easier. But
Mm-hmm.
for us, like we're in our studio, we're on screen and we're looking at a TV monitor that's showing us on screen. So you
Yeah.
talk like, and we have a live chat that's going on the screen where you can see people's comments. So
They're
like
probably pretty brutal too, huh?
they're brutal. I mean,
Oh,
it's mostly
brutal.
sports, like going
Got to
after
be a
you for
lot of
your
guys
sports
too.
takes. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I told Jenny today, because she was asking me like what goes. I told her that I've been in a little bit of a rut these last couple weeks, trying to like be focused on the shows. And she was like, well, yeah, I look at you sometimes. I'm like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, well, most of the time I'm looking at somebody talking shit about me in the live chat, and I want to stop the entire show to go at them because it takes every ounce of my energy to ignore it. And I'm not ignoring it because in my head, I'm like, meet me. I want to throw my address at this guy and go, meet me here and say that to my face. So I said to her, I go, being on this show is a lot like it would be as if like in a presidential debate, you know how like they do the debate and then afterwards they like look at the focus groups to see how the reaction is.
Mm-hmm.
We get instantaneous reaction as the show is going on for what we look like, for what we say, for what we, said months ago. Like, so it is a constant,
You got to have a
it's
thick skin.
yeah, I mean, I have a thick skin. I'm also very sensitive, so it's this weird balance. I can take a lot of heat. I can take a lot of harsh criticisms. I'm very self-aware, so there really isn't anything anybody can say to me that I don't already say to myself. There isn't any diss anyone can say to me that my boss, when I was a bricklayer, didn't say 10 times worse to
Mm-hmm.
me. So I'm used to all that stuff, but I'd be lying if I told you that none of it affects me in a way. It does. I'm a emotional person. I'm a sensitive
I think the
person.
bigger you get, the more trolls that you have. So it's a
Oh,
good indicator of
well,
you're
and
on the
that's what
right
these
track.
industry guys tell me. They tell me to ignore all the like. If you go on Reddit and search my name, there'll be a few threads of
No
people
way.
that talked about me, and there's one in particular from last winter where there's like 300 comments talking about how much they hate me.
No
And
way.
yeah, it was hard to read. Yeah, because like for some people they just want their sports to be analytical and information, and they don't want the meatball that's going to scream and shout into it. And I get that. I accept it to a degree, but I can't ignore that stuff cuz I'm so socially aware of what's being said on Reddit and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and I look at all that stuff, and I think a lot of people in our industry they don't. And for me, I do because I was that person in the comments. I was the fan that was like, Adam Hogue doesn't know what he's taught. Now I am that person. So I want to see.
That's the cool part of the story though, to me. Like that's what it's all about. I mean, like you said, the fan in the stands, but obviously the name Braggs in the stands. Like that is the cool part, is that you were a fan and you are a fan. I mean, you're a fan,
Yeah,
and
100%.
and so that you've been able to, through hard work and persistence, turn this into a full on career, but you're still you.
Yeah, 100% still me. And then that's what they tell me. They're like, don't read any of that stuff. Well, I can't. I tried to not, but I know
Yeah.
it's like the telltale heart, and it's beating and I know it's there. And so if I don't just look
Yeah.
at it and get it over with, and sometimes I'll even go in there and say how I feel and how it makes me feel. And a lot of times I'll gain a few people that appreciate me that didn't like me because I'm so open to criticism. I'm so open and
Mhm.
honest about how things make me feel. But it is a long, winding, stressful, anxiety driven, emotional road. But it's who I
I
am.
think that
And
that openness is what, like, has you is what why you're growing so fast though
yeah, no,
too.
I
Like
agree.
being yourself and being so also why I wanted to start this podcast too is Man, I was having a hard time on the platforms because when I'm like posting and like producing content, I'm coming from an area where like people are trusting me with their body. And so I always found that to be that's so important to me. Like
Yep.
that is really, really important. It's doctor level importance. Like I don't ever want to not be taken seriously because of my personality, because I'm goofy. I like to have a good time. I'm not super serious. I joke around a lot and I joke around in inappropriate situations. I
Yeah.
just don't put that out on social media because I don't want people that either are potentially hiring me to help them with their body or that are currently on my roster to not take me seriously. And I do think it's impeded on my ability to grow. And so for me, I've always taken the approach of producing content that provides value in the form of education or giving someone a nugget of information that has helped me and is coming from my, you know, over decade long of experience in this that they can apply to their life. But, uh, you know, the platform has changed. And now it's like TikTok, man. If you don't grab someone's attention in in 1 second, they're on to the next thing. And so what does that do for someone who's posting a long-winded, because I'm long-winded. So I'm not the type of person to just kind of take all this information, put it into a little video and go viral with it. It just doesn't suit my personality. So that's why I've kind of started this podcast, is so I can not only put my personality out there, let people get to know me a little bit and have these interesting conversations, but also there's more to me than fitness, which is why I didn't just make this podcast conversations with coaches. I think that's, there's more to life. Even when you're as into fitness as I am, it's, that doesn't take up my headspace for my whole day. I'm
Right.
doing all kind, I have different interests and, people are multifaceted. So that's why I wanted to have content creators on here so I can have different conversations with people like you and talk about different stuff. And I
Well,
do
smart.
think
I
that
mean, it's smart because I think
yeah,
people that are interested in what you're doing in the bodybuilding or working out and physical fitness aspect of it, it's about finding passion, finding consistency, finding a mental, emotional stability and balance in your life. And so talking through some of the stuff we have today that are just, I think everybody processes
I
in a
don't think I've
different
ever
way.
talked about that depression stuff publicly before. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I
Well,
posted
and
that I've had it, but
that's
not in
something we
that kind of
should,
detail.
and the more people you have on and the more vulnerable you are to those kind of that openness, I think the more
Yeah.
open you'll have from your guests. It's not too hard to get me to open up because
Yeah.
I'm very easy to do that, but I think um when you're interviewing different people that may not be as open, the more you're open and vulnerable, I think that gives people a little more comfort to do that for themselves. So yeah, man, anytime you ever want me on to talk
Yeah, we'll
about
do this
anything,
again. I
I
think this
enjoy
was
this. I enjoy
yeah,
this kind of stuff. And you'd be surprised.
I
I
do
know
too.
there's a lot of kids that like the 30-second reel on Instagram or TikTok, but finding that niche audience that looks for this long form stuff, there is a space for that as well. I mean,
I put
I
this
do.
stuff on so I always have YouTube going on, man. Like when I'm eating, when I'm working, like if I'm working from my computer, I have YouTube going on my TV. I go to sleep to YouTube. It's not a lot of it's not fitness stuff, but it's different stuff where there's people talking and having conversations. It's all very long form. So like kind of like uh with bodybuilding, that stuff I like. With with music, when I started making mixes and everything like that, I started making the stuff that I like. So with this, I'm taking the approach of I'm just gonna make stuff that I like, and this is the stuff kind of stuff that I like to listen to. And if people out there enjoy it as well, then they'll enjoy this
I
kind
definitely
of thing.
enjoyed just having the conversation, but I know I'd enjoy listening into this kind of stuff. Like, I don't know how people listening would feel about this politically, but I enjoy Bill Maher as a political pundit, just as a TV show. He does Real Talk with Bill Maher on HBO. But what I like about it is that he has people from both sides of the political aisle, and they come
Hmm.
on and they debate. Like, it's not two like-minded people talking, it's people that will argue.
Right.
And but he does his own podcast called Club Random, where he does long form interviews with all sorts of different celebrities, but they don't talk politics, they just talk about what we literally just did for the last couple hours. And one of them I'll encourage you to watch is one of them is with Quentin Tarantino,
Oh,
and they
I
have
would
some
probably like that a lot.
you'll love it. And they talk about, they intertwine with life, movies, you know, things that made them laugh and everything. And it's like 2 hours of them just sitting there drinking in his little Club Random bar.
And then you know
And
what's cool about this too, man, is I just get to talk to people that I want to talk to. Like
right.
they're like I don't not reaching out to people that I don't want to talk. Like I'm only reaching out to people that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
So that's also what's really cool about this. Is like whenever I have one of these, it's gonna be with somebody that I want to talk to. I'm not gonna talk to somebody I don't want to talk to.
There
So
you
it's
go.
I mean it's been so far it's been really enjoyable, and I feel like it's gonna be a good place. But you know how it is, man. I take the approach with bodybuilding has taught me like things always take forever, way longer than you thought. I mean, just like with Braggs in the stands. I mean, you started from the bottom, nobody listening, people making fun of you, whatever. And you probably weren't very good. I have to guess right away. I mean, it took you time to get skilled. And then now look. So I take that approach with everything. And sometimes it's good because like you're like, okay, it teaches you patience and consistency, but sometimes it's bad because you know when you know going into something you're like, oh man, this is going to be embarrassing, this is going to it did take me a minute to like get the balls to like get on camera and like do this because you just know in your head from all of that experience that you're going to suck at first. And so once you get you're like, ah, all right, let's get this over with. So that's kind of the approach that I took. But hey, man, we will definitely do this again sometime. I'm glad we got some face to face. I feel like I haven't talked to you other than through emails and for yeah, virtual hug. So I do appreciate you jumping on, man.
Anytime,
Is there
man.
anything you want to promote? I'm gonna have your social medias all over everything, but is there anything you want to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what do
If you're
people
into the
should they look out
Chicago
for?
Bears, you know we're on YouTube, CHGO Sports. That's where, and you know we're on audio platforms too. So if you're looking for Spotify or Google or Apple or whatever, we're on there too. I cover the Bears with CHGO Bears, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're a football fan, a Chicago Bears fan, that's where you'll find me most of the time. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter at Gbraggs Junior 23, and um, chalking it up with every Bears fan in the world, arguing with them about who our next quarterback should be.
And if you
Last,
go in there in the comments and you say some shit, just know that he will go in the comments and he will argue
yeah,
with you.
I will come at you. And next week, though, I'm gonna move off of arguing about football to delving into how much I hate Thanksgiving food, which has really fired people up.
Oh, all
So,
right. Before we wrap up, okay. So like let's like pivot for a minute and talk about Thanksgiving food because like okay, so to me, I agree with, I mean that's a hot take, but I agree with that. To me, like when I go for Thanksgiving, what I do is like, look, man, I'm not here for turkey. I'm not here for, but I don't really care about the this type of food. I'll get like a small plate. Stuffing, I like. I do like stuffing. Mashed potatoes, I mean, well, yeah, that's fine. But to me, this is all just a formality to dessert. Dessert, I like. So, like, I'm like, I'll get something real small because I'm saving myself for that dessert.
yeah,
Like pecan pie, like I like that kind of stuff.
yeah, apple pie for me,
Yeah.
with a nice crust, maybe a little ice cream on the side. But
Oh
no,
yeah, for sure.
I've told people like they're like, well, if you don't like Thanksgiving, that just means you don't have people that cook it well. No, my mom cooks a great Thanksgiving meal. I just don't like the
I agree.
blandness. I don't like it. Again, people will be like, well, then they don't season it. They don't. No, trust me, you'd love her Thanksgiving. And maybe I'm just ungrateful, but it's all too mushy, soft. It's like it's for people that don't have teeth. Like I don't.
Just like for like grandmas that don't
yeah,
have teeth.
like I
Yeah,
don't.
no, dude, I agree. I've never thought that Thanksgiving food.
I used to
And same
love
with
it, and
Christmas.
now
Like, I don't like ham. Like, I'm
I've
not like a
come to
ham
I don't
guy.
mind I don't mind any of it, but it's just like to me it's like 4 or 5 years ago I came to the realization that it's overrated. I can't say that I hate it cuz I certainly will have some here next Thursday, but yeah, I just sometimes I'll instead of talking about sports, I'll pivot into my hot takes on how much I hate Thanksgiving or I'll tell
All right,
people
dude. All right. Now that we're on this topic, I think that you've got yourself a little thing going with Taco Bell, if I'm not mistaken, from your
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah.
So, like, what is your go-to order at Taco Bell?
Cheesy
Because I
gordita
mean, that now that's better than Thanksgiving.
100%.
100%.
100%. Cheesy gordita crunch
Yeah.
and chicken quesadilla. Chicken
Is the
quesadilla.
I always get okay. So the difference between a gordita and a chalupa, I always get those mixed up. What is the gordita versus the chalupa?
I've never had a chalupa, so I have no idea. All I know is that you have the because I always get the same things. I'm very regimented. So the cheesy gordita crunch is like the soft shell with the hard shell on the inside, then
That's the one
lettuce
that
and
I
meat.
like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the one that I
Yeah, yeah,
like.
yeah.
The
And
gordita.
it has that like that sauce to it that's really good. Literally
Hmm.
making my mouth water right now. Have a I'm gonna have a not a meltdown, but I'm gonna be going to Taco Bell after this from talking about it too much.
Oh,
But
fit it into your macros.
yeah, ain't it? Well, I don't think there's any fitting into what I would order at Taco Bell into my
Yeah.
macros. Because then the other thing I get is the chicken quesadilla, but I always get extra sauce. That's the pro tip. Because sometimes they don't always put enough sauce in the chicken case, or the way they distribute it it's not like evenly distributed. So if you ask for extra sauce, it's that much better. So those are my go-tos.
Do you do you like sushi?
Yeah,
You don't see okay,
yeah.
okay, so here's what I started doing with sushi, dude. You ever notice when you go get sushi, like let's say you get a couple rolls or whatever, dude, they'll take the sauce and they just glop so much of that like spicy mayonnaise and all that stuff all over everything. For me, I think that stuff tastes like shit.
Yeah, see, I'm the
I
opposite. I'm the novice sushi guy,
okay,
so I like
yeah,
what
really
what a
Americanizes
sushi
the
snob
sushi.
likes.
Yeah,
I don't like the hardcore sushi stuff. I like the what the
California roll.
entry level sushi person likes.
Like California roll, which is like hardly sushi. Like it's just
Right,
like a little imitation crab meat with like cucumber and okay,
right,
I
right,
got you.
right.
That makes sense. But so like with me, I love sushi and I love all the hardcore sushi. But for one, I hate mayonnaise. Like I always hated mayonnaise. I don't even like to look at mayonnaise.
That's right.
So
Remember that. I
I
remember
like
that about you now.
I like there's so when it comes to food, I like there's I like everything. There are things that I like less than other things, but by and large, I like everything. Now, condiments, I'm a snob with. I like barbecue sauce, but I don't like a lot of condiments. And with sushi, they load that stuff up with spicy mayonnaise, and I think it's disgusting. So what I started having them do is I always have them put the sauce on the side. Not only does the sushi taste way better, it tastes like you could taste the sushi. It's not just this like giant glob of fucking mayonnaise, but also you're conserving so many calories on the sauce because they are loading that stuff up and that adds a ton of calories. So it's like a win-win for me. But I'll get like the eel sauce, which is more like a barbecue sauce, and I'll get that on the side. So that's just like that's my pro tip is for sushi is get that sauce on the side. That's how you do that. So, all right, man. We could definitely talk. Once you said Thanksgiving dinner is overrated, my ears started
The
ringing
light
because I
bulbs
was
went
like,
off.
"Yep,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting to me." Because I totally agree, man. So, all right, man. Well, I'm glad we got to have this chat together. Thanks for joining me with this for this conversation, and we'll have to do this again sometime, man.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Talk soon.